Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me on the CyberHagen conference. I feel very excited. I've been in the conference in 2019 in person, and this time we're going to do an online session. And I'm going to talk to you about some incident response tools you might want to enhance inside your organizations, or if you have a third-party incident response company. This will be an interesting session and an interesting technology that they might think they want to develop. I'm not going to go into very much technical details since this is intellectual property of the company. However, I'm going to carve the outline and you're going to understand exactly what I'm talking about. And it will be some sort of a challenge for you if you're interested in going that direction. The name of the presentation is Autonomous Enrichment. The idea with enrichment in incident response is that it's so much powerful that it can save you a lot of time, even during routine, so not only in emergency cases. If you know how to develop the enrichment or you know how to grab it from third-party areas, then of course you'll find yourself in a much more robust environment. You will have the ability to enhance the technology that you're using, whether it's an antivirus or an EDR or any other type of technology in the cloud. And using that information, you can automate to the level of autonomous the way that incidents are being handled. And this is what we want to talk about. Security Joe's is an interesting company, a very special company, I'd say. We are not the usual incident response company. The thing is that it's divided into a number of things that we are unique about. First of all, we are heavily invested into crisis management and incident response. Hence, we are working on all the ends when an incident response is happening. So we negotiate with the attackers, we negotiate with the regulatory bodies, we help with recovery, containment, and so on. And of course, we are part of the forensics investigation, having best of breed incident responders. We are also distributed 24/7. That means that we have employees in Australia, New Zealand, India, Colombia, Brazil, Europe, and Israel. And we are distributed across 7 time zones. And I think the most unique thing that we are offering is the fact that we don't want incident to happen. So when we are implementing our tools and we are basically onboarding a new client, we also use a red team because we want to exhaust all of our powers in order to ensure that there won't be any leftovers that will, curious and drive-by attacker. But we're not here to talk about Security Joe's, so let's move on. What are we going to talk about today? So we're going to talk about autonomous enrichment, as I mentioned, and we're going to talk about what is autonomous enrichment. Why do we think it's a Swiss knife material? So it's part of something that you will probably want, depending on what you offer to your clients or what you would like to have as an education tool for your research and malware analysis team. I will explain how it works in a high level, not technical, and how you can implement as well if you want to go that direction. At the end, we're going to talk about a little bit conclusions, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to hear and answer. So the first thing that we want to do with autonomous enrichment is basically empower our security mechanisms. I'm taking an example for our EDR. We are basically a company that much or heavily invested on EDR. We do, of course, monitor SIEM and other product and so on. But the EDR, for me specifically, and how I instruct the entire team and the company, is to rely on one technology, and from it, we can basically execute code or build playbooks, build a SOAR, and so forth. A SOAR, for those who don't know, is an orchestration of security tools where you can, from a single point, control them all. So the first bullets are the effects that we know. So let's read it out loud so we can all understand what do we mean by facts we know. So the EDR product is relying on massive collection of feed and databases that can detect malware. In addition, it also holds machine learning capabilities to overlap those areas where sneaky attackers sometimes build or chain certain behavior that is not per se an indicator of compromise. It is not perfect, for sure. If you haven't discovered it yet, then you should, and I will also explain how. Many areas are still very hard to predict. So the limitations of the EDR, for example, comes in web servers, where web shell is very hard to predict. I'm not going to go into the technical details of why. You'll need to trust me on that. Of course, if you think otherwise, I'll be happy to hear. Many EDR vendors allow ways to extend the powers of their product with external preventions. If you don't know this, then my hand is a robotic hand. This is an amazing drawing from Security Analyst Summit of Kaspersky back in 2019. And this is actually a very interesting prediction. So, Kaspersky predict that we will enhance our bodies. And we see it because technologies that we use today are also very into enhancing themselves, whether they have a marketplace inside them, or you can connect to the API and you have endless ways of how you can play and tune each of the machines that you control with their sensors. So what are the things that we can improve? Well, we can improve in two ways. One is manual, and the other one is automated. Of course, again, if you have other ideas, I'll be happy to hear. The manual way, and this is the way that I explained how to detect that web shell are hard to predict, is offensive research. When you're conducting offensive research, you're basically trying to bypass your security products. If you find ways that haven't been documented, then you create on top of them specific rules or indicators of compromise or indicators of attack, which are like a chain of compromised indicators, in order to better detect sneaky or newly developed malware. If you build a lab, you need to build POCs. Those can also help you with awareness and, of course, delivering and contributing to the InfoSec community. So an offensive research lab is something that we have inside of Security Joe's, and I encourage you to have that as well. The automated side is the auto-enrichment of the EDR to maximize its power. How do we do it? Well, on our side, how we do it is we connect to its API. Some of the vendors, not all of them, allow a very enriched access to the API, which can allow you to find existing threat that the EDR does not find. In addition, it allows you to tune threats to circulate back. So meaning you find a threat, or the EDR finds a threat, and then you take this indicator, you go back to a collection of malware or a collection of your choice, and you find similar cases. There are a lot of companies out there who are experts at similarity technology, like Intezer, for example, and they basically work day and night in order to find artifacts inside malware binaries and connect them or link them to other binaries which are undetected but share the same genome. So if we can do it alone or using their collections, then of course we can enhance our security tools by ourselves. So why do we think this automation is quite of a Swiss knife? First of all, we are busy with a specific practice, and this specific practice makes us better. We investigate, we create those tasks to research new capabilities, and then we discover things that even the developers of the program or the technology did not discover, and then you can submit tickets to them to enrich the basis of this technology. We do it a lot with a lot of vendors with CrowdStrike and SentinelOne and so forth and so on and so forth, Palo Alto. As an MSSP or as an IR company, we have the capabilities of having like a fusion of EDRs, and from that we can basically find a lot of ways to either find a deep place in that technology to improve, or we can find something that can across the border in all the products can improve. And so we can basically help these companies do their job better, which of course will create a situation where our job becomes better. So with it, with this Swiss knife, you are boosting the product capabilities, hence better protecting your environments. You're enriching your teams with both red team and blue team because we are doing offensive and defensive activities. And so I'm including offensive. And when I say offensive research, I don't mean offensive as, NSO wise. What we're doing is in a controlled area, in a lab, we're doing it with the approval of the companies. And we are, of course, reporting to the companies and not to the media and so on firsthand in order for them to patch or to create detections to the benefit of our clients. We are automating procedures, so we are connecting the IOAs, the IOCs, the Yara generation, the playbooks and the workflows with our enrichment, and that creates some sort of an autonomous enrichment, because when we are receiving a trigger of an alert, automatically our technology knows what to do. So it knows that it needs to enrich, it needs to find other version of the same family, and it also needs to do some other thing that sometimes security feeds won't do. It needs to somehow tune the sensor that is on that machine to either be more or less paranoid, depending on the threat that it right now executed on that machine. Because before the propagation starts, we see only one machine being under threat. And so we can tune either the machine learning algorithm or specific detections or specific behavior, user behavior, and so forth. We can tune that a little bit back and forth to make sure that the malware or the actor knows that we've identified the threat, and then we are closing the gaps. So when you're automating procedures, you're becoming much stronger. And of course, you're developing without knowing, by the way. We, at the beginning, we didn't thought about commercially selling that. We are still not doing that. This is why we are here today. We want all the companies to have that same technology. And you're developing an intellectual property, because no matter how you will develop that product, it will be a product that you developed, you designed, you deployed, you chose what type of software you're going to use, what type of solutions you're going to support, and so on and so forth. Without it, you can, of course, continue as long as you're protecting your clients in a sufficient manner. However, you're going to be losing precious time that can prevent a cyber attack. For example, a detection of malware with a workflow that can also detect the second version of the malware and not only prevent that specific thing that was found by the EDR, can prevent a cyber attack that will come later, because we know that attackers are not exhausted easily. They will find different versions, they will refine the malware, and they will come on a different window of time with a different vector, and they are constantly trying to bypass security mechanisms. So we should do that too. Trusting the product alone, this is something that we see a lot of organizations, even large organizations up to Fortune 500, mistakenly trusting products alone, leaving them to do everything by themselves. Now, monitoring is one layer. However, interacting with the product, doing threat hunting, doing offensive research, building automations. This is something that a company that delivers a product, even on their finest solution, won't benefit uh, uh, in the best way they can if they will provide you also with all of that offensive research and threat hunting and so forth. Some small companies do that. Small amount of companies do that. For example, Mandiant and CyberHagen and so forth, they have this premium solutions that you can take with the 24/7 and with the existing teams that can support. But there is limitations to all things, and intellectual property is something that I think is a good way for a company to develop their security teams. Not exploring the full potential of your security solutions is another thing, and it's connected directly to the bullet right above it. Exploring in general is something that needs to be done, even in configuration, deployment, IT, having an infrastructure which could, in a harmonic way, communicate with the employees supporting it and the researchers behind it and so forth, and create KPIs to always be better. It's something that is not only saved for the EDR or the security, it's something that is related to the entire company. Ignoring the fact that some products enjoy external assistance. So the companies themselves, in their sales pitch or in their offering, they offer an API access. So if they do, take it. If they offer marketplace and you think a marketplace or some of their apps can be worthwhile, like a sandbox or integration with specific applications, consider taking it, because the product enjoys it. If you enrich it, then it can work better. Missing a very productive way to educate your research team, something that is very, very important. At the end of the day, a small amount of people can actually build their own day-to-day without interacting with their teams. Some loves learning, some of them love teaching, some of them have the blend of both, and we need to find a way to make sure that someone who likes to learn a lot also will have the ability to teach, also will have the ability to contribute from what they learn, but in an interesting manner. So not in the way of, here's a link, go to GitHub, see that, but teaching a workshop end-to-end internally. This is something that is as greater as intellectual property. So how does it work? As I mentioned, the power of tuning a product to your needs is hidden in its API. So if you know how to work with the API of your security solution, then of course you will have the ability to enhance it a lot. Now, working with APIs is not very straightforward. Sometimes there's a lot of missing documentations. Sometimes companies build API as a side solution for extending in complex environment and so forth, and not specifically for creating an enrichment technology on top of that. And so, for example, some EDRs will not allow you to run code through the API on the machines where sensors are installed, which limits your capabilities a lot. The EDRs that allows you to do so then extend your ability to tune machines, to access areas where you can improve each sensor alone and all of them together. Some of the companies even provide additional software that communicates with the API, whether it will be through the marketplace or external to it, that you only need this executable or binary to deploy on that specific machine, and then you can, for example, conduct a forensics analysis, take an MFT snapshot, and so forth. So the API is very powerful, and we're going to focus on that today. How do we do that? So the first thing that we want to do is to find out what alerts we're getting and what are we facing. So if you look at the left-hand side, you see like the imp hash. And the imp hash is a very good way to find genomes or functions, like import functions, inside the binary and their hashes, and then find similarities in other collections. Now, you can find a lot of similarities which are not for sure coming from the same malware family. And this is where garbage can blend with interesting information or related information. And this is where the power of research come in, and time should be exhausted in understanding what type of similarity we are doing. Are we leaning on solutions such as Intezer, for example, to do that similarity, or we can create our own technology, and it will use imp hash and SS-deep software and so forth in order to find similarities. So this is the first step inside our enrichment technology. The other things that we want to find out is the file dynamics, or the distribution of this file type, and other areas where we find more commonalities and more similarities, in order to make sure that we are bringing back or circulating back the right version of that malware family, and that we track this specific trigger with its family, and not branching out. Because once you bring in a sample that will create the slightest branch out, then if everything is automated, then think about it. It will branch and branch and branch, and then you get, it won't be a malware family. It will basically create a malware city, and your detections will, drive off the main road that you intended to in the beginning. So this is like a very picky side of the research, where we need to tune the search for commonalities and similarities, in order to make sure that what comes back is actually what we expected. Another interesting area in our API is the fact that we are looking for C2s. So soon we're going to release something I'm very proud of. Felipe Duarte, one of our senior researchers, who's also very active on our YouTube channel, where you can find interesting videos I'll discuss in just a minute, has wrote an article. And in this article, he's explaining about a tool called PlugX. PlugX is a remote admin tool that is being used by very respectful APT actors. And those who use it basically distribute it in a lot of different versions. And inside that, there is a configuration file that we wrote a specific script to extract the configurations, because inside the configurations, just as we saw with TrickBot and QuackBot and other malware families that we've stumbled upon, the configuration holds the C2. And if you have the C2, the command and control, then you can basically verify if the C2 is live. There's a lot of ways to do that, and we do it in our own unique way, which some can think is long way, some can think it's a short way, but we will always be happy to receive feedback and improvement. And this is why I started with this. We're going to release a full research about PlugX, along with the Python script that extract the C2s, and we're going to release it on our public GitHub for you to use if you bump through tools such as PlugX and you're interested in its C2s. We're doing it automatically, and then the C2s, the command and control servers, are being analyzed, and we are constructing an HTTP request, whether it's HTTP or a different protocol, we are constructing the request, the packet, and we're sending it to the C2 to verify if the C2 is live. The next thing that I learned from Kaspersky, for example, is that you can create a sinkhole automation where you can basically query the hoster or the hosting site like GoDaddy and Namecheap and so forth, and think about acquiring the domain name if there is a domain name. Then you can basically get prompts from existing malware which already infected victims and are trying to beacon to their parent, and the parent is the domain name of that C2. So then you have an interesting game where you can actually detect victims when you're purchasing a domain. So this is where we use C2s in that fashion. Another thing that we do, as I mentioned, is offensive research. What we are seeing here is a very small area of our offensive research. You can see that we are constantly looking for ways to deploy reverse shell on machines without our EDRs detecting it. And we're also, walking through areas to find detections of malware families or ransomware families, such as Lockbit 3 and 2 and so forth. And we have labs, and in these labs, we're trying to actually conduct red team activity in order to assist the blue team detect red team activity, which is the meme that you can see here. And we're also using existing tools like Mimikatz and so forth, trying to see whether there is a version or some sort of string in the command that can create a bypass on security solutions. So this is an interesting theme within our company. So how can you implement such a solution? I hope that by now you're already experiencing the feeling, or maybe you already have that deployed, or you're experiencing the feeling that this is something doable. You need to learn the API design of your EDR product, and you need to find out whether you do have the permissions or the access or the right capabilities to conduct such, to develop such automation. You need to understand the EDR, how the EDR works and how it can be bypassed. So this is the offensive research I was referring to. You need to assemble working IOAs, workflows, detection rules, Yara, and so forth, in order to create a circle of automation. So it's basically like the game of letting a person going through a website. So there is clicks everywhere, and where they click, they can circle back to the home and then find out more things within your service or your SaaS application. It's pretty much the same. There is some sort of a circle that you want to have, that your algorithm knows what to do when it ends. So when it ends, it looks for the next one, and you can always, create a breakpoint where you need the algorithm will need an approval of a human or like human interaction, but it's not a must, depending on how your script or how your automation intervention happens. If it's an intervention to isolate machines, then you got to be careful, because isolating a domain controller is not the best thing to do. Move detections to a centralized location for further analysis. We're using AWS, so you can use your own cloud environment for, with Lambda and others. So you can basically create further analysis such as similarity and so forth. You can find SSDeep and imported hashes and packers and configs and so forth in order to create unique artifacts. And from them those will happen inside your centralized location. And from there, sky is the limit, depending on what you want to do and how the API is kind towards you. You need to correlate the results with large malware databases. We talked about it. This is the similarity the similarity step. Extract the C2 servers and verify the activity. Return the results back to the EDR to create a circle. Update IOC database. This is the basics of stuff to update the IOCs and detect much more than what you already detected. And the interesting part is around create tuning workflows for each machine or network segment. That where I talked about the paranoid symptom, where you can create one machine more paranoid than the other, or one network segment more paranoid than the other, which will harden and exhaust a drive-by attacker on specific segments of your networks, while the others won't be as important or won't be as sensitive, and you can leave them on the default configuration. And of course, repeat the process, try to improve it, and so on and so forth. So the conclusions is to empower your EDR for better IR and SOC. As we are an incident response company, we also have a security operations center. So the guys, they have much more experience than layer 1 and layer 2. However, it was familiar to everyone when they joined that they will do some of the hard work or the heavy lifting, instead of hiring either a third party or hiring first or second tier of SOC analysts. So off-the-shelf security tools have a lot of advantages. This is something that we saw. They also have a lot of gaps and holes, something that you need to investigate if you don't believe me. No cybersecurity technology is bulletproof yet. There was this attempt to create an autonomous penetration testing or autonomous capture the flag in DEF CON and so forth. And I believe that there somewhere out there already technologies which are very, very close to being bulletproof. However, they are not commercial yet, or maybe don't want to disrupt the market. And also, states like to keep that technologies to themselves. So as far as I know, and of course I don't have all the knowledge, so you can enrich my knowledge if you'd like, there is no bulletproof solution. You should consider pushing technology to its limits and up to making your security operations center and incident response autonomous as possible. At the end of the day, your IR team and SOC teams can't rely only on existing detections, and you need to let the hunt out. And hunting is always revolving around the human side, and hunting is also the offensive side. And in that manner, we're talking about involving the human with the technology, even when saying autonomous, because we know that putting aside cars, which I think I think companies like Intel and Mobileye and so forth are getting to this extraordinary innovies as well, like extraordinary phase where they can detect every fly that walks by your car. We are still not there, I think, in terms of cybersecurity. And autonomous enrichment on the other side can become an intellectual property. So if you invest enough, it can be something that is hidden in your chambers as well and can assist you in a very great way. This is how we see it. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. And if you hear it as a recording, that means that something happened. So you can send me an email with your questions or find me online on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram, wherever you feel comfortable with. I want to thank you very much for your time, and thank you, CyberHagen, Maria, and Peter for having me. It was a pleasure. Thank you.